All right, everybody. So we are recording. We'll go ahead and get started in case people are on late. They can always check the recording, but for the sake of Heidi's time, we'll get started. But I am thrilled to welcome Heidi back for another webinar with us. She did one maybe like 6 weeks ago on different therapy options for people of all ages, and we really had great feedback from families that attended that webinar. But this topic was picked because we've seen a lot of conversations within the private parent group of many of our kids having very particular food preferences and limitations on what food they're willing to eat, which obviously makes it difficult. So Heidi has some great tips on how to work on some of those things. And she is very knowledgeable and open to questions and is just a great resource. So I really encourage you to connect with her. And she works at Ivy Rehab for Kids, who's become a partner of ours. And we're just thrilled to have you, Heidi. So I'll turn it over to you. And then if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I can help Heidi by kind of reading those aloud as they come in if you're not able to verbally ask your question, but we're happy to take questions from folks too. But Heidi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes, please feel free to ask as we go along. I also do save time at the end because I know how valuable those question and answer sessions can be after this. Appreciate that warm welcome. I'm so glad to be back. For those of you that don't know, I am Heidi Edgar. I have been a therapist for 19 years. And you can see listed there some of the specialties that I have, some of the increased knowledge, and feeding is definitely one of my passions. It came through in the last webinar, and so happy to share this knowledge. The photo there is actually me and my mom. We were on our way to Virginia Beach for the Go Map course that you see there, we'll talk a little bit about that. But when I go places, she gets to travel with so that my husband can stay home and be by himself for a little bit, which is always fun. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about what are those top 10 myths. I'm sure a lot of you have heard them. We're going to dive into what those are and why, if those things were true, we wouldn't be talking about these things today. We're also going to talk about what it takes to eat. I will say this is going to be very foundational. So if you have questions, please ask. Please reach out. I do want to make sure that we understand it's very foundational. There's so much involved. And then what are some of those positive ways to engage? What are some of the strategies that are out there? What are some of the options? And then time for questions. So what are those top 10 myths about food and meal times? I do want to dive into all 10 of these just to give a little rundown. I'm sure a lot of you have heard these things. So a lot of times you'll hear, well, eating is the number one priority. Everybody does it. Actually, no, breathing is the number one priority. And if you can't breathe, you can't swallow. That's a very big thing. So think about if you have a cold, it's really hard to eat. Your nose is stuffed, so you can't breathe, so you can't swallow at the same time. And now, while we don't breathe and swallow at the exact same time, we do take those breaths. And breathing, our brain is wired to breathe above all else. It will do that first no matter what. Eating is instinctive. Eating is instinctive for the first roughly 1 to 2 months of life. When baby is first born, beginning from about 2 months to 6 months, the infant is developing that suck, swallow, breathe, and it's still a little bit instinctive, but it's becoming more of developing those patterns. And then by 6 months, it's no longer instinctive. It is for pleasure. And so if a kiddo has had difficulty with it or pain or any type of, silent like aspiration or things like that, it is not fun. And so then they no longer want to do that, which leads to the second myth: eating is easy. Eating is a two-step process. Oh, if it were only a two-step process, again, we wouldn't be here. I will dive into all those steps that go into eating, just so you have an idea of really what it takes, that it's beyond just chewing and swallowing. My all-time favorite myth: you shouldn't play with your food. Well, if we didn't play with our food, it wouldn't be fun. We all do that. That's why there are chefs who create these magnificent little features with their food. That is an art form. It's a play. And so it's how we explore our food in many, many ways. A child won't starve themselves. Oh, if that were the case, how many of your kiddos would probably be eating every day without any issues? Kiddos know and listen to the sensor in their brain. We all have it. We as grown-ups tend to ignore it. And that's unfortunate, but kiddos don't. They listen to that sensor unless there is something blocking it. I will be honest, there are some meds, there are some diagnoses that definitely block that sensor that tells you when you're full, tells you when you're hungry. But a child, if they're having pain or discomfort or other issues with eating, they're scared, they're nervous, they will go without food. It's not the number one priority, as we talked about. You only need 3 meals a day. Well, not really. They've actually found that research and science are showing that we probably need about 6 small meals a day, snacks, those types of things to sustain the caloric intake and sustain our energy across the day. It varies for some people and it varies for some kiddos, but we're showing that it's not a hard and fast rule of only those 3 meals a day. My all-time favorite, it's just a behavior. They're doing it to get attention. It may be now, but it probably started somewhere else. All behaviors are a symptom of something else that's not working the way it should. And it's our body telling us that something's not going right. Adults have behaviors, kiddos have behaviors, all mammals have behaviors. And so that behavior is just a sign that we need to dig a little deeper. Foods have a time of day. Oh, if that were the case, Brenner would not be a thing, which is breakfast for dinner, Lupper, lunch, and supper combined, all those things. I say if you like eggs, eat them whenever you like. Pizza can be for breakfast, all of the above. Now, are there some things that are a lot easier to prepare later on? Sure, but there's no wrong or right time to eat a certain food. And then meal times are meant to be proper. While I am by no means saying that we should burp out loud and do all those things at the table, meal times are meant to be fun. And so it's okay if it gets messy. It's okay if we don't know which fork to use. It's okay if we use our hands sometimes. There is a time and a place to be proper, but I don't think any of us are going to be eating with the king anytime soon or the president. So, or anyone like that. But that's why we should have fun with it. So, food is sensational, but it's sometimes scary. So we learned all those myths. Those are things that they still are around today. We hear them all the time. Why is food such a big, overwhelming thing for some of our kiddos? One of the big things that we have to tie into this is that other sense that is starting to get more traction and more knowledge out there in the general public for interoception. What is that? That is your own, and we all have this, your own sense of hunger, of having to go to the bathroom, needing to go to bed, you're tired, how things feel on your body, and your general engagement with your environment and how you interact with it. Why does that matter? Is because that ties into the wanting to even explore. If you are constipated, your tummy's already feeling full, there's no room for anything else. So why would we want to put more in? Or vice versa, if you are a young one and you constantly have reflux and you're vomiting, doesn't feel good. And that reflux can carry over into older kiddos too. Even if they're swallowing it down, you might see that constant like putting it back down in, it still doesn't feel good. So we have to have an awareness of all of those types of signals as well, because they tie into our food and our eating and wanting to explore. I have included links here. So Kelly Mahler is an occupational therapist, and she does a lot of research into interoception and why it matters and how we need to be aware of it for ourselves, and how we interact with our own food and for our kiddos. So these are a very basic layout of the steps to eating. And basic, there are even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps there. All said and done, though, when you really dive into it, there are at least 32 steps, if not more, to eating and exploring food. When we talk about look, it's all about what do our eyes see and take in. And that doesn't mean just like what color is it, what size is it, what shape is. But I'm sure you have some kiddos of yours that like they can find the tiniest little speck in there and like, oh, that one's different. Not going to eat that one. Because we all start there with our look. And then the smell. Is it a big smell? Is it a little smell? How do we take that smell in? Is it overwhelming? Does it make us feel good? Does it make us not? And these foundational ones have to be met first before we can progress higher up the hierarchy. From touch includes not only touch at our hands, but also then touch along our arms, up to our face, back down. Could even be touch on other parts, like on our leg. I've had some kiddos who are working so hard to explore that they have to touch other places in terms of like their shoulders or their chin or their neck because they're just still a little bit nervous. So touch can include anywhere from there And then usually from there, we progress up to taste. And taste is not meant to put it all in the mouth. Could be just as little as a snake test where it just touches the tip of the tongue because we have to start learning in small increments. Same thing with bite. Bite is a big one because we think bite and chew. Well, for a lot of our kiddos, it might mean bite and spit out so that we know that we're safe and we can explore it. And then from bite up to eat. Eat is that big one. Even one bite, chew, and swallow is an amazing step that we all love because it means we're starting to explore a new food. And then to add into that, exploring that new food, it takes at least 10 times for our brain and our tummy of chewing and swallowing a food to know if we actually like a food. And so a lot of times I'll hear, oh, I don't like this. I don't like it. I don't like it. We've explored it once. We'll explore it again, but it might not be that same day. It might be later on, but it does take all these steps to explore food. And that's where that myth of it's just a two-step process, just chew it and swallow it. There's so much more involved. And these are involved for all of us. We just don't often think about this. We might talk about them, especially if it's a new food, like, oh, that smells so good. And the emotions that that evokes for us. That's why food is such a big topic because it's such an emotional thing as well. So we talked about those steps, and you saw that we started way down at eyes, nose, touch, and all of those things start far away from our body. And that is because that's where it feels safe. I've even had kiddos where it starts across the room and we set it there. It's covered. We lift it up, look at it, oh, and we cover it back up because it's such an anxiety provoking thing for some kiddos. But all food exploration for all people starts with our eyes, starts with our nose. That's where we start to take it in. What does it look like? What do we smell? That's why you see here in this photo, it's quite an example there. They've got broccoli, they've got carrots, they've got ketchup on cheese, they've got dino nuggets and some lettuce. So they've definitely made a little adventure there. It looks like a volcano with erupting. And so that's a fun way to explore, but it definitely starts with our eyes. Broccoli is a big sight to see, all those branches on the flowerette, all that ketchup everywhere. Think about what that might invoke for you if you saw that on the table. Would you go, oh, that's a big mess. What are we going to do? Or would you go, I smell that ketchup. I smell all those things. And so everything does start far away. And then we work our way on getting closer. Once we're consistently exploring at that hands, eyes, nose, it can be possible. And I like to explain it that we're working our way up our arm because the arm length is a nice distance to travel. And it's easy for the kiddos to see it moving up their arm. And then they can also move it back down. That way, there's a comfort level as well. Once we've gotten through there, learning can then start to come closer to the face. Our face and our stomach are two of the most sensitive areas that we have that we tend to protect. You think about you curl in, you don't feel safe, and that's that primitive reflex that we all start in. That's that comfort position. But as we bring this food closer, then we can start to explore more, which coincides with those steps to eating we talked about. So what does that mean? There are lots of different ways to go about having food therapy. Primarily, you're going to hear about OT and speech, occupational therapy and speech therapy. Other people that I haven't listed here that might be involved, a nutritionist, a registered dietitian, your general practitioner, a gastroenterologist or a GI doc, an ENT or an ear, nose, and throat, and psychology and psychiatry. Those would be the big ones that I also collaborate with outside of the two that I'm going to talk about here. And because as we'll dive into a little bit about behavior versus organic when it comes to food aversions, a lot of those organic things, such as difficulty swallowing or enlarged tonsils and adenoids, low motility in the intestinal tract, reflux, all of those things do require that additional specialist to help problem solve, see what's going on the inside. So from an occupational therapy side, an OT who has had additional training in feeding or additional specialties is really going to look at the overview. They're going to really dive into a sensory profile. So meaning how does your child and maybe you yourself interact with your world around you, not just interact with food. How do they do with dressing, bathing, engagement and changing and transitions, and changing environments, including different textures of clothing, different textures of carpet, tile, grass, all those things. Because when it comes to exploring food, our environment is also a big part of that sensory experience. Also, they're going to look at a foundational oral motor skills assessment. So how does the mouth work? How is the tongue working with that? The lips and all of those coordinating together. And then an overview of what do meal and snack times look like. Because we also want to consider, what does the whole family look like when it comes to meal times? Does everybody sit down together? Is it kiddos sitting down by themselves while parents are still running around trying to finish up their day? We all saw that in COVID. There was a lot of craziness that happened for that time. Or is it two people sit down together and then two people join? What's that look like? Because if your kiddo won't sit down for a meal, but all they see is you running around doing the dishes, doing all these other things, they think that's what you do at mealtime, is that you go back and forth. The OT is going to look at all of those things in conjunction, in concert together, to see what they can do to best support. Which one is the biggest area impacting that difficulty with exploring food? They're going to work closely with speech therapy as well, if possible, to best support the kiddo's need. So with a speech therapist, working closely together, that speech therapist who's had additional training and education is primarily going to look at the oral motor skills and the swallowing skills. I myself, as an OT, will tell parents I can do everything up to the swallow. Once we're getting ready to swallow, I need to bring a speech therapist in to really make sure that we're covering all our bases, because they do have additional training in that swallow. I do know some OTs who have gone on to get that additional training that speech therapists have in swallow. It is not something, though, that's usually widely done by an OT. So primarily speech therapists do that. And then there are some speech therapists that are getting trained in the sensory stuff as well, because they recognize that that is a piece of exploring the food. So with all that knowledge, where do you start? There's so many things to think about, as you saw and heard me speak to, with all the steps to eating, all the different components of interoception, of behavioral versus organic. Where do you go from there? What does all that mean? So these are two approaches. I myself am trained in SOS Approach to Self-Feeding. All of these are active links, so I will make sure that when I share it to Lauren, I include the one that allows for that, or if we need to share them in a different way, I'm happy to do that so that you guys can get the active links as well. The SOS Approach to Self-Feeding is called Sequential Oral Sensory, and what that one does is it talks about all the sequencing that is required for feeding, the oral component, and the sensory component, and combining all those together. You will see that the top 10 myths, I have here the link there. That is where those myths come from. The SOS team has heavily researched. They've been around for 20 plus years, and they have shown that these myths keep coming up and up and up, and they are not relevant to how we actually learn to eat and how we actually explore our food. They have great resources for parents, and a therapist trained in this is going to utilize approach that takes the food and works on being able to tolerate it at that distance, like I talked about, and bring it up closer to the mouth to get to that consumption part. The get permission approach has a similar approach. The big piece with the get permission approach is that it's all about making sure the child also feels ready and safe to engage. And this is where that interoception piece really comes into play, because with food aversions, there is a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear surrounding it, and that for an older kiddo, they might think they're going to choke on it. They may have had an incident where something happened and it scared them. They may have had an allergy that was unknown and then it was known. Any number of things can cause that anxiety. And the get permission approach means that we have permission. It's not about letting the child dictate, but it's about making sure we're both on the same page, so that child, adult can feel connected and safe to engage in that food exploration. Food chaining. This is the best book that I have ever found about food chaining. I love this book. Chaining simply means you take a familiar food or a part of a familiar food and build off of it to a novel food. For example, a child who is exploring and regularly consumes French fries, we might chain that to chicken fries. Same shape, but a different food. You could also take that French fry that's familiar and chain it to something similar, but a different shape of French fry. You're taking a piece and chaining it to the next thing to help build that familiarity and decrease that anxiety. Pardon me while I get a drink of water. So I did touch base on oral motor skills. A feeding session that is primarily focused on oral motor skills may or may not include actual food in the session. If there's actual food, there is research that shows the carryover is better with that, but there are ways to utilize tools to support that development as well. The biggest things that we're going to look at when we're looking to see if it's part of the aversion is due to a lack of oral motor skills is the ability to close those lips together to make that sound, and also the pucker. Those two things, the first one, that closure is required to clear a spoon, to clear a fork, and then the pucker, almost like a kiss, is required for straw use. And if we're utilizing other muscles besides cheek, jaw stability to do that, it can be very taxing. Tongue mobility and the ability to sweep means the ability to take that tongue and move it from side to side, and also out, down, and up. The ability to go out, down, and up is to be able to clear our lips, but also to be able to clear our teeth, thinking about getting back to those molars in the back, as well as the roof of the mouth. For many kiddos, they may have a flat palate, meaning the roof of the mouth is more of a very flat, narrow, wide shape, or they could have a high palate where it's very narrow, very curved. If that's the case, that tongue has to be able to get higher to scrape food out of the roof of the mouth. And if food gets stuck up there, that can be very scary because you feel like you can't get it out. You're not going to be able to move it. The next thing would be chewing. And that starts from that munching pattern that you see in little ones when you transition to solids, where they just go up and down like this, to that nice rotary chew where the lower jaw goes around like this, like a cow chewing. We need that to be able to move the food around, move it from side to side in conjunction with our tongue, which leads to then the ability of management of that food in the mouth to the swallow. So we chew, we usually move it back to our molars, and then with our tongue, move it back to swallow. So these two, the behavioral approach does still exist. There are behavioral programs at many hospitals. This approach for both children and adults focuses on the idea that a child simply is refusing to eat. They are doing it because they're making a choice, and that choice is to not eat. However, as we've talked about, there are many, many things that go into why we're refusing to eat. It could be a choice in that I don't like that food. It's not a food that I want to eat. It could also be that food scared me because it got stuck in the roof of my mouth and I couldn't move my tongue to get that unstuck, and I got scared. So then we have a choice that came from an organic issue of not being able to move our tongue the way we needed to. What I find for many children and many adults, and the research does show, is that while the behavioral approach works in that specific setting, so say someone who's gone to a hospital program or has a program in their home, it works right there. And primarily for older kids, teens, adults, they logically figure out, if I do this now, they're going to stop bugging me about it and leave me alone. So they learn to do it in that moment, might carry on for a few weeks after, but then there's a regression where they stop eating, and sometimes that's even worse. So while there are components of needing structure, needing organization, and those behavioral things within these other programs, we also have to consider all those other organic parts that come into play. That is where the play-based approach comes into play and comes into play. Can be helpful and a combination in that children learn through play. And so if we can utilize play to decrease the anxiety, we then increase the exploration. Anxiety is a natural appetite suppressant. And so if we are anxious, our appetite naturally decreases. And then we don't want to explore because we don't feel hungry, which then ties into that interoception we talked about in the beginning. And that then results in a child who just sits there, isn't engaged. Now, the play-based approach can also be utilized to support increasing engagement across all food, meaning the kiddo helps to set up the table for meals. They help to prepare the food, even as simple as stirring, adding seasonings, pouring, all those things. Yes, it's going to get messy, but it's a great way to engage with food without having the anxiety of, I have to eat this right now. It allows for exposure to smells, to sights, to feelings, to even sounds of what they look like as you're exploring without, I'm going to eat this right now, which can be very scary for many kiddos. Are there any questions? I see the chat up there. There's one at least. Would love to answer them. Go back to any slides that need to go back to, and lots of time for questions. Please feel free to just come off mute. Happy to answer.
Hello,
Hello.
this is Mercy. I have a question. So my son, I think his is more of a texture, and we actually went to New Mons and we did see the speech, I guess, and someone else. But so like banana, so he can actually eat a banana by itself. But if I cut the banana and put it in the food, he'll eat it. So for me, it's more so like fruit. He's not eating any fruit. So what I'm doing right now is just blending it. But I would like him to like eat it because in food they won't have like the blended, stuff. It's more of a, apple, fruit, or whatever the case might be. But I mean, I'm still continuing with the, just having him touch it. But so far it's not working.
Okay. Well, I love that you're open to, like, it sounds like maybe smoothies or something similar to that. That's a great way to get started because at least if you're using even frozen fruits or fresh fruits from the produce section, there's always a change in variety of flavor. Sometimes blueberries are a little bit sweeter, a little bit sour. Same with different types of apples and bananas. You're finding the same thing. So it's a great place to start. And if the other thing I would ask is, I don't know what your comfort level is with letting him cut, but having him start to dice that fruit up, put it in and make the smoothies and be a part of it so that we're getting that exposure as well. And then my first step from there would be, could we maybe give it a kiss before it goes in? It's going to be his smoothie, so it's okay. Give it a kiss and then put it in. If we've worked our way up from all that sight, smell, touch, could we give it a kiss? Because there's also an endpoint to that that's not as scary as I got to put this in my mouth and chew it and swallow it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we do that because that's what the recommendation was just to just have it, him touching it and then him kissing it and then, eventually it would, he would fit it in the mouth, but not yet.
Not
We
yet.
haven't
How
got
long has
yet.
it been?
It's been months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may
Yeah.
need a little extra support. I mean, you're definitely on the right track, though. I love that you're doing that engagement. Maybe it's also time to try, let's cut them into other shapes. Let's, uh, put them into yogurt. Let's do those types of things too, maybe exploring them in a little different variety. I wonder if we also have a little trouble with the texture and management of the food. And smoothies are much like a liquid, so they follow that same pattern of consuming a liquid. And so when it becomes a whole piece, what do we do with that in our mouth? That would be my next question. And it sounds like
Yeah,
he may not know what to do with it.
that is true. Yeah, because even with so that's why I even took him to like to get seen was because he was swallowing versus him, like chewing stuff, and that was I felt like, and he wasn't even pushing it all the way back, so he still had residuals in the mouth. And so I had to like give him fluids, which fluids sometimes it was like an on and off, and I didn't want him to just drink juice only because that's all he preferred and not water.
Yep. He probably needs a
Are
little bit
you?
to be able to find it in his mouth then as well, that flavor.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah. I would wonder what his oral motor skills are like for sure.
Uh, what do you mean by that? Like how well he chews? I feel like he gets fatigued to a point where he tends to swallow, versus him fully chewing the food, all the way. Like for
Yep.
me, let's say if I'm eating the same food that he's eating, if I chew mine like 5 times, he'll probably do his like two or one and then just swallow.
Swallow it. Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's where that fruit becomes a little more challenging because you mentioned that he has residual even with the smoothies, that he's not fully clearing everything. He's not getting it all the way from his mouth back to the back and swallowing it all and not chewing fully. So I wonder if he's getting tired, if he's losing it in his mouth and he's just like, oh, I disappeared. I'm just going to swallow it till it's gone. Yeah. It's hard to say without really getting a look at him, but those would be my initial thoughts based on what you're saying.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
There was a question in the chat too of what's the process to start feeding therapy? Like, do you need a referral and how does that typically look?
Oh,
Yes.
great question. That didn't even cross my mind. I'm so glad you asked. Yes, you do need the referral from either your specialist or your primary care physician, pediatrician, saying either speech OT or you could put both on it, eval and treat for feeding therapy. If you have specific concerns, the doctor could include, if it is swallow related or oral motor related, or they could just put there is a generic code for pediatric feeding, and they could just put that on there. And that is what we can utilize. That script allows that therapy to, for you to give a call, get that intake, and get that process started.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yes, happy to help.
I appreciate this is great information. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here, happy to provide it.
And Heidi's just going above and beyond. She's volunteering at swim camp next week. So if anyone sees her again in person, she will be there. And you'll recognize some kiddos, Heidi, at swim camp. So that will be fun.
That's awesome. I will say I won't be at swim camp next week, unfortunately, because I'm on
Oh, you're going to the
vacation.
Seaford one. Oh, okay.
Yep, I'll be at summer camp on the
Great.
31st, and then
Oh,
I'll
good.
be in South Delaware because I can go to that one. And
Awesome.
then, yes, next year I will plan ahead.
Great. Well, we're excited to have you in any capacity. There is a Heidi signed up for swim camp, and I just assumed it was you.
I
But
hope
we're
I'm
happy
signed
to
up.
have you.
Yes, I hope I'm signed up for the right one. I confirmed everything. So
Yes,
yes,
you should be good.
yes, looking forward to it. Susan, did you have any questions I could answer for you?
There's one.
Susan is our outreach director too, so she will make sure to share this with the families that ask a lot of questions all the time about feeding related stuff. Um, Heidi, someone asked which Ivy Rehab location you're at, and you're at the Churchman's Road, Newark location.
Yes. Yep. I'm at the Newark location. I do go up to the Wilmington one every once in a while. I am the area director as well. And so I cover there and 3 locations in Pennsylvania.
Great. And you do Saturday appointments, I heard.
I do, yes. I actually am a clinician. I work Monday through Thursday. I'm off on Friday, and then I work on Saturdays. I
Great.
will share my Saturdays are full, but sometimes openings do happen. So
Okay.
happy to help. Yes.
You're a popular woman. Um, any other questions for Heidi at this time? And we'll share the recording with everybody tomorrow. And Heidi, if you're willing to share your slides, that would be great too.
Yes, I will. I apparently I spoke very fast tonight. I apologize. I didn't
That's
mean
okay. No, it's great information. Does anybody have anything else for Heidi before we conclude?
Actually, I do.
Sure. Go ahead,
Yes.
Myra.
So Heidi, you had mentioned, I jumped in late. So you mentioned about swallowing issues, about them not knowing what to do with certain foods. I'm having still that issue with my son. Like certain foods, he'll chew it, but he'll spit it out.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to navigate that, and I'm at a loss.
Are they specific foods from a certain food group? So like specifically meats
Yes,
or it
yes,
is meats. Okay. Yeah,
it is.
that usually tends to be the one. Talk to me about what types of meats. Are they ground beef? Are they like chicken breast? Talk to me about that.
Chicken, chicken breast, or even ground meat, he'll just spit it out. So if I make spaghetti with chopped meat, he won't do the chopped meat. If I cut up the spaghetti into small pieces, he'll do that. But it has to be like soft foods, basically. So we're still struggling with certain textures.
Very much a texture thing, I would imagine, as well as I wonder if we have the endurance to sustain for meat, like especially chicken breast. Chicken will expand
Okay.
before it gets smaller in our mouth. I strongly encourage all of you when you go to eat your next meal or your next snack, take a moment and pause and see what that food does in your mouth. I would wonder for him as well. You said you cut up the spaghetti, then he will do the spaghetti with the meat sauce.
No, the meat sauce, I normally take it and I puree it and then I mix it.
Oh, you mix it all together. Gotcha.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I would wonder then too of mixed texture. So the sauce and the meat is what's called a mixed texture because you have that liquid.
Right.
It can be a little bit thick, a little bit thin, any variety there, and then you have that solid mixed into it. It can be hard to manage because the liquid will do one thing while we have to chew and manage the solid or the meat. And so I wonder if he's having difficulty with managing that liquid that goes a little bit easier back down to our throat
Hmm.
versus the meat, which we have to chew and manage at the same time. And so you have to coordinate both of those things. Does he do soups, cereal with milk?
He, he won't do cereal. He will not do cereal.
Not cereal, yeah.
He's very limited with his food intake, but he will not do. I've tried cereal. He wants nothing to do with it. I think, and again, I think it's a texture.
I think it's a texture. I think it's that mixed texture where there's a liquid and a solid at the same time is what I'm really hearing from that. And then I
Okay.
think that for your bigger ones, your chicken and those kinds of things, I
Hmm.
suspect that it gets overwhelming in his mouth and he doesn't know what to do with it. And so he's chewing it, chewing it, chewing it, chewing it, and then like I don't know what to do. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm gonna spit it back out. I
Gotcha.
will
Okay.
say spitting food out is while it can be gross, it can be messy, all those things, it is a safety mechanism. So we never want to discourage don't spit it out, but it might just be let's try again, let's explore again.
Okay.
Because we all maintain our gag reflex, and that's to protect ourselves and protect our airway. And the ability to spit a food out is a safety feature because it happens. We all get a bite that's too big or something we can't manage. You do want to be able to spit it back out. So while it it is frustrating, know that that is a safety feature. I
Okay.
would wonder too with chicken breast in particular, how do you cut it? Does it strips? Is it pieces? Is it
So I tried to put it into strips. That makes it easier to puree it. The other day, though, I did kind of boil the chicken and put it in the sauce. So it just really dissolved really quickly, and I just mixed it with his mashed potatoes, and he ate it with no issues.
that's yep.
Um,
And I think that it's a texture. It's a texture because it's too hard to manage. It's too hard to
okay,
chew. Yep.
okay,
And again, I'll say I can't say for certain because I don't have eyes on him, but from what you're saying, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's just too many textures, too much to manage in his mouth.
gotcha. Okay, all right. And do you do feeding therapy?
I do.
Okay, all right. I'll be calling for you. No problem. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to help.
Thanks.
And Myra, a couple of our families use Heidi for feeding therapy too. So I can some of those moms, I can connect you with them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Well, Heidi, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We will get this recording link out, and if you could email me the slides and then share with me like the best contact number for
Mhm.
folks to reach out to if they're interested in scheduling, that would be great too.
Yes. It should, I'm going to click one more.
Okay.
Yep. And
Oh,
so that
perfect.
is the clinic number to the Newark location at Churchman's Road.
Okay.
Like I said, I highly recommend all of my therapists. I will be there though as well. And same with my Wilmington location. They are phenomenal therapists up there. I'm proud to say one of them used to be my student, and so she's phenomenal as well as the clinic director up there. But this is the best number. I know I've had another family before that she did email me, and I'm happy to then connect you with the email that helps to get scheduled, as well as provide this number if you lose it. So I actually already have these downloaded as a PDF, so I will get them off to you, Lauren, before I head back upstairs. And happy to answer any questions. I will say, I'm going to share it out loud. If I'm a little delayed in responding to an email, I do go on vacation starting on Friday, but I will be back after that. We go on a week, and then I'll be happy to help.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. We really appreciate it. Have a great vacation too.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you.
Okay, have a
Take
good
care.
night.
You too.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Heidi.